Imagine if the note G was more than just a note, but a colour. F was burnt ochre, C was sky blue. What if every station on the London Underground had a very specific taste, and if music wasn't just sound but actual pictures that you could paint? In this video, our very own Alice Allen looks into a phenomenon that goes way beyond the subtler differences most of us have when experiencing music, sound, or indeed travelling on the subway. We ask, are these extremes of cognition some form of disability, or indeed, are they superpowers? And for Alice to finally find out what she actually tastes like.
The more senses you involve in an experience, the deeper you can connect to that experience. We're looking at the world in a slightly different way, looking at it from loads of different angles.
What happens when the connections in the brain mix the senses? What happens when sound, music, vision, colour, taste and emotion become so blurred that they feel like they're one? What does it feel like? What does it look like? And how does it contribute to the way artists make their work? In this video, we take a deep dive into synesthesia.
I had no idea. I just thought I was doing paint by numbers, and I thought, oh, these colours are wrong. I want to do my colours. Synesthesia is a union of the senses, literally, and it's where sort of one sense triggers another. So when I look at a book, I see the black and white on the page, but also each letter has its own really specific colour. So the page is colour, it's all these different amazing colours, coming out. And I don't know if I'm seeing it or I'm picturing it in my mind. It's a weird sort of ethereal kind of thing. I don't know what it is.
Yeah,
it's really hard to
really
pinpoint.
Abstract.
Yeah.
The idea that synesthesia is an illness or a disorder does still crop up from time to time, and that's pretty annoying. It's not a disorder, and on the other hand, neither is it a superpower, because it's been called that as well. It's simply a trait, and it's no different from having ginger hair or green eyes. It's just simply a trait.
So if you're soloing over a jazz standard and the chords are ticking along, do you think to yourself A-7, G major? Or do you see colours, or is it both? Like, what's kind of the process in your head?
Yeah, it's both, because I also have perfect pitch.
Yeah.
So that comes into the mix.
Yeah.
So I've got a thing called unidirectional synesthesia.
Nice.
As opposed to bidirectional. So when I see the note written down, that triggers a colour. But when I see the colour, that doesn't trigger the note.
I know Shona talks about how, so for her, the colours relate to letters, which then obviously relates to sound, so like the note C. And that's really useful in music as a sort of extra tool to have, especially when you're playing by ear without music. So I think, for her it has become a tool as much as a trait, which is quite interesting.
Yeah, I mean, it's got lots of advantages. It's also got quite a few disadvantages, having synesthesia. But certainly the most prominent and obvious example of an advantage that I can think of and I know of is that having synesthesia enhances your memory recall. It obviously provides extra memory hooks which make recall that much easier. Things seem to leap straight into long-term memory. They bypass the usual process of memory consolidation, where it first enters short-term memory, passes through working memory, and then goes into long-term memory. So a lot of synesthetes do report exceptional memory skills, and also enhanced sensory processing. They have a good eye for detail, and this is across the board. You mentioned then about colours, showed us colours. If you've noticed, synesthetes don't just say it's blue, they say it's light blue with bits of this, that and the other, and it's very, very specific. And it's always the same. Absolutely amazing eye for detail.
And that couldn't be more true for my amazing friend and colleague Seonaid Aitken. Seonaid is an exceptional musician, violinist, viola player, vocalist, arranger, presenter and composer. Even though Seonaid doesn't know James personally, I really felt like he was describing her.
I find improvising quite easy.
Yeah.
Because I have that extra dimension to learning chords and thinking about chords in a certain way because they've got this colour relation.
Yeah. I know, because watching you improvise is just absolutely like spectacular. And I mean, my mind literally boggles, and I say this to you a lot, but you know, I'm sat there and for me, it's so abstract, you know, and even if you wrote down some chords, I could play the roots because it's an instruction to do it. Mm-hmm. But when there's no instructions and you're just left with your ears, I mean, it is phenomenal watching you work around these chords. So I love that you're being informed by perfect pitch, but also colours. So you've got these two kind of anchors that lead you. Mm-hmm. Would you be able to talk us through the scale of our Western notes and describe each colour and all the nuances if you can? I know it's a bit abstract.
Well, no. They are really specific, that's the thing. So D is black for some reason, but because it's a sort of almost oval shape, because the letter O for me is white, it has a sort of white hue to it. Yeah. C is yellow for me. I think quite a standard yellow, not like bright canary yellow, but just it's still bright, but not yellow.
Yeah, nice.
G is green. It's nothing too bright. I had to Google this because I couldn't find what F was, according to my brain. But it's kind of like a Prussian blue, but maybe a little bit lighter, on the lighter side of that. And then there's E, which is almost like a sky blue, a little bit turquoisey. It's literally like a sort of kaleidoscope.
Wow.
When you're playing, you know, I'm looking down at my fingers and blah, 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 I'm going to get to a nice A down there, and that's a lovely blue. And you know.
Oh, wow.
B is kind of like an orangey brown, like a sienna brown. I've had a wee look on the colour palettes online. Nice. Browns, and it's more towards that. And that's it. Then that's
amazing.
The whole scale. It's just such a bright colour. I find that tune. Love it. It's just so happy and joyous and yeah.
Could you tell us a bit about your synesthesia and when you realised that you had it as well?
My synesthesia's, it's quite rare. It's very intrusive, very personal. Putting things in your mouth, very personal. And in my particular case, I've got that connection between the areas of my brain that deal with taste and deal with sound. So essentially, I taste every sound I hear, and that could be voices, ambient sound, dog barking or birds singing. When I read something, as everybody does, I assume, you read it to yourself in your head. That also triggers off my synesthesia, so I can't escape from it. I first realised I had it at a very early age, between 4 and 5. And my mum used to take me to school on the tube. I was learning to read and write at this time, so my mum suggested I write down the names of station names that we stopped at or passed through. And to this list, at the age of 5, I used to add, as best as I could articulate them at that age, the flavours I experienced that went along with the station names. And I've still got these scraps of paper. I mean, they're in a box somewhere over there. Actually, I don't know if you can see that. But that's got all the tastes and textures that I experience when I'm travelling on the tube. I did it as a way of trying to explain to people, even the tube lines have got their own flavours. Whenever I travel on the tube, I don't remember the station names, I remember the sequence of flavours. And that's how I remember moving around. But it's of course no use to me when somebody asks me where's so I say just get off at Spangles and go up the roads.
it's really popular now to have cross-genre collaboration in art, so dance and movement and film and music, and you feel like artists are trying to sort of create something like synesthesia for the public by trying to combine not just one art form but many. And I just thought of that there when you were talking. We're sort of, feels like those of us that don't have it, we're trying to experience something that might be like what your daily life is.
Yeah, it always made sense to me to have, when you're looking at a picture, to have something to taste that goes with it. I'm looking at Kandinsky. Kandinsky was a synesthete, and his paintings, you can tell they were done by a synesthete because of the way they're formed. And I can taste Kandinsky's, and they're amazing. It's a bit like eating a meal, and it's like they put them together in a purposeful way.
Well, I found a fellow musician, Kirsty Matheson.
My name's Kirsty Matheson. What I do exclusively now is I paint music. And I don't mean that I'm inspired by music. I literally paint music. I am trying to get you to see what I hear.
I ended up commissioning her to paint the album cover for my Chasing Sakura album, because I was like, this is brilliant, because she understands what it's like.
Yeah.
And I really wanted to see her vision.
Yeah.
I was prepared for anything, because it really could have been anything. So I gave her the opening, the title track, and I said, paint that.
Amazing. It's stunning. You must have been so pleased when you saw it.
I really was. Yeah. I was like, this is great.
Yeah.
But I was prepared for anything, because I know that, my colours are kind of random.
Yeah.
So what she heard or saw when she heard the music could have been completely, it could be anything.
Yeah, 100%, yeah.
But yeah, it was really low. It's kind of midnight blue, and then there's these little splashes of colour which kind of look like cherry blossoms.
They do, yeah.
And she said to me, that I didn't mean that. That wasn't contrived. She said, that's just how I heard it, and it just like little bursts of colour. I was like, oh, that's so cool.
I didn't know that. I'd assumed it was informed by the cherry blossom part of the piece, so I didn't know that had just come from what she heard.
Yeah, totally
amazing.
Random coincidence. Yeah, it feels natural though, because it's all art.
Yeah.
So why shouldn't it all be, interconnected?
Totally.
It wasn't until I think it was 1812. At that time, the Napoleonic Wars, the first verifiable documented case of synesthesia was recorded and published, and that was 1812. It took another 170 years until the early 1980s before interest in synesthesia was rekindled by Dr. Richard Sytowic. What really opened up synesthesia research was the availability of affordable MRI scanners. I went under one, but I've been under loads of them. One of these machines meant that neurologists could actually bridge the gap between subjective experience and the objective verifiable evidence. It was on a graph. They could show these two areas lighting each other up and neurons firing between the two areas.
Yeah. And seeing your MRI scans, that must have felt amazing to actually be like, this is it, and to have that judgment disappear and feel part of a community.
Well, I'm just saying, because again, nobody's ever asked me about that question before, but that was it was an epiphany. It was brilliant. I was so thrilled. It was an incredible feeling because it was down there on paper for the first time, and it gave me a lot more confidence when speaking about it.
It's been absolutely fascinating to talk to Seonaid and James, and I'm so grateful to them both for their expertise and time. My big takeaway has been to really appreciate and love the differences we all have in the way we perceive the world. It's encouraged me as a musician to really nurture and support the parts of my working practice that might feel a little bit different to somebody else's. For me, synesthesia really shows us what the mind and the brain is capable of.
I've got to ask. What's the taste? What's my taste?
It's quite nice actually. It's like again, I get taste and textures. I've got to translate it into proper food. It's a bit like a Malteser, except it's not round. It's sort of like a flat Malteser.
I love that.
And Hannah's actually sliced ham.
What about Jack? Have you seen Jack?
licorice.
Licorice. I love that. That's brilliant.
Yeah.
Yeah.
My own is awful. My own name is it's like, or my own voice as well. It's like chewing gum. It's lost all its flavour. It's very bland.
Oh.
It's just a bit.
Oh, that's quite weird.